So when I was a kid, I loved bedtime stories. I would beg my parents to stay up with me and read me anything I could get my hands on, whether it's something they made up or something that I loved, that it was a picture book. Obsessed. And so I came to Potomac in kindergarten. I've been here sort of for my entire formal education. And I still have this really deep desire to read and to have this sort of narrative storytelling continue. And so I try to get my hands on whatever I sort of could match my reading level with, which wasn't a whole lot, because at kindergarten you can read basic sentences, and that's about it. But I loved it anyway. I'd watch it in films and TV, and anything I could kind of grab a story from. So when I was sort of that age, I became really obsessive around certain stories. I remember I was in first grade, and I loved Peter Pan for a couple weeks, and so I had Tinkerbell wings that had Velcro on the back, and I attached them to all my sweaters and wore them for 2 weeks straight, which I ruined like 8 sweaters that way, but that was fine. And so my parents were really great about sort of fostering this love of reading. And so when I was in the very end of kindergarten, the first Harry Potter movie had just come out, and I was probably a little young to watch it, but I watched it anyway, and loved it, and felt, completely head over heels for the story and the characters and what it stood for. And so I started trying to read the books. They were a little out of my comfort zone of reading, but became really obsessed. And so when I was in first grade, I was, and still am, completely afraid of needles. And so I had a doctor's appointment, and I was pretty decent and didn't cry or kick or scream. And so my mom, when she was coming back with me, found these. And back then there wasn't a lot of Harry Potter merchandise, so it was kind of a big deal then. But I thought they were the coolest things ever, and I proceeded to wear them the next day to school. My mom woke me up in the morning and put a lightning bolt scar on my forehead with her lipstick pencil, and I was so psyched. And I came into school, and at recess that morning, a girl who still goes here, so she'll remain nameless, pinned me down on the playground and rubbed off the scar with her spit, and then took off the glasses and crunched them in the sandbox, and I was devastated. I was so excited and so pumped, and I didn't have a ton of friends back then. Yeah, and I was heartbroken. And so I came back to the classroom, and she drew on one with another lightning bolt scar with like red Sharpie, which looked horribly inaccurate. So it drove me crazy. And then she proceeded to mock me for the entire block, and I was so hurt. And my teacher finally noticed and pulled me aside and told her to stop, and then brought me into the costume closet and took costume pencil and drew my lightning bolt scar back on my forehead, put back on my glasses, and said to not give up something you really believe in. And that message resonated so much with me. And even though it was something sort of silly like Harry Potter, it really stuck with me. And so I had this drive to start reading the rest of the books, and I, found messages that I really loved. And for me, I wasn't super religious at that age. I went to church and had a Christian family, but I wasn't sort of really understanding some of the messages the Bible taught. And so for me, I had a weird sort of connection to Harry Potter in the way it taught me morals, and I had sort of a what would Jesus do with my what would Dumbledore do, and I loved sort of the discussion it had about what right and wrong was, and that it's tough when you're growing up to have a system that doesn't allow you to really make mistakes. And I enjoyed the fact that they talked a lot about that doing something wrong doesn't make you a bad person, but it's always trying to make that right action and always trying to do the right thing. And even though it's a silly children's book, it sort of encouraged me to look for other books that taught these same lessons, and other stories that really inspired me to try and have a better understanding of the human condition, in lack of better words. And so from that, it really started me wanting to write. And I'd always had this love of stories, and I hadn't really wanted to tell my own yet. And so I took whatever sort of creative writing opportunities I could, and tried to read a lot and understand the art of telling a story. And for me, that's always been something that really resonated with me. It's how I made friends through shared love of reading and the stories we also enjoyed. And so as I look sort of forward, what I would really love to do more than anything is have some job opportunity where I can write this kind of story that a child can read as they're going to bed and feel like it's something that's a security blanket, like Harry Potter was for me as a child. Yes, these are my Harry Potter. Thank you.